Hello and welcome to the Mighty Oak Show this week. Hope you are having a great week and looking forward to our time together today and the conversation that we'll have. Always excited to have this time, and I'm thankful that because of technology, even though most of us are kind of locked down right now trying to figure out where we can go and where we can't, we can still have good conversations like this one, and excited about that. If you are listening somewhere other than YouTube, please take a moment to go over to YouTube. You can subscribe, hit the like and notification bells. That lets you know when more content comes online, and we would love to share that with you. It is very important to us that as we produce content and do our best to have very helpful conversations, that you are able to receive those. And if we need anything right now, it is helpful conversations. There's so much going on in the world, so much that is confusing and unknown, and we have the opportunity to come together and again, hopefully, give you some tools that you can use in your own life. And excited about our conversation today. And with me today is Gene Joseph. Gene Joseph is a United States Marine, has been serving for some time. We'll talk about his service here in just a moment. But very, very interesting background. Was born and raised for a short time in Haiti, moved then to the United States with his family, and in addition to serving in the military, and he is serving right now in the military, has a faith story, and in addition to all of that, works with one of our partners that if you watch this show, you know well, Soul Survivor Outdoors. He works with them as they serve and minister to active duty service members. So a whole bunch of stuff. And I wanted to take a minute to talk to you, Gene. Thank you for joining us, and man, appreciate your continued service. Let's start with your background. You grew up in Haiti, which is probably something most of us aren't familiar with. Talk about that, talk about your family a little bit, and then coming to the United States and what all of that looked like for you guys.
I honestly, I don't really remember much from Haiti. I do remember my dad was our school teacher at the time at the school that me and my older sister went to. And then once we kind of graduated out of his classroom, he kind of became the principal of the school. So that way he could still like be in our lives a lot more. Mom would stay at home, and then we lived with her parents at the time. I mean, life back in Haiti wasn't bad for us, I would say. We actually lived a pretty decent life, had everything provided that we needed, and it's just a good life. We left Haiti about 2000, moved up to Nyack, New York with my father's dad. And we lived up in that area for about 5 years. My dad started driving school buses at that time. And like we'd all go to church every Sunday. Like my family's raised us up in a Christian household, going to church, reading the Bible at home, spending family time together. Honestly, I don't remember much about New York either. I was still pretty young.
Why did your family move from Haiti to New York initially?
Just for a better lifestyle, to come here, better ourselves. And my dad was huge on education.
Yeah.
And he just heard so much about the American dream that he wanted to provide that for us. So he brought us over here, and his dad was already over here, and his dad was always talking about how much opportunities and how better jobs and education is over here.
So you don't remember Haiti, you don't remember New York, so you're either suppressing a lot of very terrible memories or you were super young when you moved to Florida. So you get to Florida, and growing up in a household that is culturally very different, and trying to adjust. Can you talk about that for a little bit? That's something a lot of folks deal with here in the United States, of course.
Yeah, it was definitely different. So at home, my parents spoke a lot of our native language, which is Creole. And we didn't really understand it too much because they put us in ESOL classes as soon as we got to America to start learning English and start developing that language. So
How old were you?
I would say about 5.
Okay.
6.
Yeah, still pretty young, yeah.
Classes. And I don't know, we just started learning English primarily first. So the whole Creole language didn't really catch with us because we didn't really start having full conversations with them in it. they started taking us to Haitian churches. So like we'd go to those, we'd sit around with them, wouldn't really understand what they were saying much, but like few words you'd catch on to because you'd hear it around the house and like you knew what it meant. But like it was just one of those things that we knew we had to do because our parents did it. So we'd go to church every Sunday, every Wednesday, go to their Bible studies with them. And that's just about, culturally, they would still keep cooking Haitian foods.
Right.
A lot of traditional cow tongues, chitlins, soup jama, which is something that they make every New Year's Eve, which is this like pumpkin soup. It's really good stuff.
What was your faith journey like personally? Growing up in a church where you don't speak the language makes it hard to, even understand, let alone adopt faith for yourself. What did that look like before you even left your house? Your understanding your need for faith and coming into a relationship with Christ.
So it wasn't until about second or third grade did my parents allow us to start going to an English church. One of the Haitian churches they went to was in the same building as the church that we grew up in, which was First Church of God in Vero Beach, Florida. And they had a children's ministry upstairs, and they started sending us to that. And that's where I really started growing in my faith and starting to make those friendships with friends at church. And still to this day, I'm friends with a lot of those guys that I met in second and third grade.
What was the moment where you said, I need to make this my own? I need to, whether it's, it's coming into an understanding of your need for a savior, or maybe what you had seen in your parents and your family crystallizing for the first time. What was the catalyst that caused you to really accept Christ and enter into that relationship?
Originally, it was in sixth grade, just watching my older sister grow up in the youth group, the middle school youth group, and just the great leadership that they had there. Those guys really just brought me in, even though that I wasn't that old. I was much younger than a lot of them. They brought me in. They showed me the love of God. And they just showed me the fellowship and that the love that they have for each other through Christ, and all the sacrifices that either they've made in their lives because they knew that God had a better plan for them. So just watching other people with my older sister growing up kind of just brought me closer to God.
Did you have people in your life that mentored you, kind of through your young teens and into your early adult years?
Yeah, I actually had a couple of people. One guy that sticks out tremendously is Nate Wilkerson. From about fourth or fifth grade, like he's been in my life, and he influenced me from then all the way up until the time I graduated. Yeah. He ran this after school program at my high school and my middle school, actually, called Campus Life. Yep. He would come to the school, and it was literally him bringing pizza, and he'd share videos and just fellowship to these students like after school. And I was just like, I was starstruck by it because this was like a public school, like allowing something like this to like be happening and stuff like that. So it was kind of great. And he just like mentored me and my younger brother all throughout our school education. What
motivated you to go into the military? I know you were a part of an ROTC program early,
right?
But particularly coming from another country, what was the motivation for you?
My dad was a huge motivation, actually. Wow. He was all growing up. He was like, I need one of you guys to either be a cop or join the military. So that was always in the back of our heads. So
was that because he cared about community service, or what was his? Why would he say that?
Just he's huge on giving back to the country, just for all the opportunities that we've been given here. Like, we've had a tremendous life while we've moved to the U.S., and we've had tremendous opportunities, and just how great of different opportunities we've been able to take advantage of. He just felt like this would be a good way to be able to give back and help the country as well.
It's always incredible to me when you hear stories of families who immigrated to the United States, taking that perspective, because so much of the news is about how hard it is, and in a lot of ways how the odds are stacked against people immigrating to the United States. And I know some people struggle, but There are so many families that come here because they're looking for freedom and they're looking for opportunity, and they find it and do want to give back. My wife's family immigrated from Europe to the United States when she was 8 years old, and her dad has told me, many times, I don't know where we would be as a family. I don't know what would have happened in our lives if we had not come to the United States. And his son is a police officer, and they're so big on giving back to the country and the community because of that. Yeah, that's awesome to see. But probably not without its difficulties, I would imagine, coming from a completely different background. So talk about that for a little bit, kind of your journey into the Marine Corps.
So before you join, there's obviously the security clearance interviews that you have to go through. So that was a bit of a hassle because coming from Haiti, they had to get all my family's contact information, talk to all of them, make sure there wasn't any ties or like a dual citizenship back in Haiti or anything that I had. So that actually took a while to get through their security process. But luckily, I was nationalized, so I had a social, I had a passport, so I was able to use that to get myself in. I was originally trying to join the Air Force, actually.
Yeah.
I was going to do aerospace.
But God rescued you, so good on you.
I was going to do aerospace engineering, but the Air Force recruiter in my area wasn't that great. She kind of blew me off, and my buddy was joining the Marine Corps, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to pray about this. I'm going to see what the Lord says, and then I'm going to just get the ball rolling. And that's how I ended up in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Well, it's good that sometimes those events line up to get you where you really need to be. So it's awesome. How long have you served in the Marine Corps?
It was 4 years in January.
Yeah. You're getting ready to become a recruiter yourself?
I am. This October, I should be going to recruiting school.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of the things, reading your bio that you had to do that everyone has to do is move from really adopting the faith of your family and, embracing faith and a relationship with God because that's what people around you are doing, to making it your own. And sometimes that happens because you make bad decisions along the way and you're just confronted with the reality of what it is to have a relationship with God. I think for a lot of people that would be watching this or listening to this, that's an important message for them to understand. Can you talk about coming into the Marine Corps, your first deployment? You don't have to be specific unless you just want to. You don't have to, but having those moments where you had to understand, I have to intentionally decide to pursue a relationship with God. It's not going to happen on accident. It's not going to happen just because everyone around me is, because everyone around me is not. Talk about how you had to go through that process of making your faith really your own, something that you were hanging on to with both hands.
Yeah, I would definitely say the military has definitely challenged my faith a lot. The story that they tell you where after you graduate senior year, your faith is on your own. You have to make the effort to go to church. You have to make the effort to actually get time with God and just spend alone time with him. And at first, I didn't think it was going to be that hard. I joined, I got to my first unit, and I live stream church, and I'd go outside, read my Bible whenever I got the chance. But eventually, after a while, it kind of just didn't feel the same live streaming as actually going to church. I didn't have a car. I was new to the fleet. Didn't really know anyone that went to church. And I was still a boot, so I wasn't going to go to one of my NCOs that had cars and be like, hey, can I ride with you? Or whatever, can you give me a ride to church? But so I had to get plugged in. Luckily, we had a really cool chaplain at the unit, so she started to get me plugged in. And we deployed back in 2017 on a MEU, Westpac, and went to church on the ship. Our chaplain invited me and went to church every Sunday. She had Bible studies Wednesdays. I'd go whenever I wasn't on radio watch or anything. We'd get to the port calls and all my buddies would go out and they'd have these great ideas to go do stuff, get drunk, go do all these different things in different countries. And I just kind of fell into the peer pressure after a while. after going to these different countries and then coming back to the ship and just hearing their stories of everything they went out and did. Not to say being a Christian is boring, like you can go out, do that stuff, but know those limitations, know those things that you need to not stray towards, and those things that you know that the Lord knows that you shouldn't be doing. But I fell into that peer pressure, I would say, in Singapore really bad. Some of the guys suggested to go to a massage parlor. At the time, I didn't think any of it. We were stuck on a ship. The racks on the ship are tiny, as you know. Everyone's curled up. So I was like, I could use a massage. I probably told this story only one other time, and it was to a unit that up in Arizona while we were doing some rock climbing with SSO. But at that massage parlor, that was actually where I lost my virginity, sadly. And to this day, I've kind of buried that deep down inside me, and I literally never brought this up. Only those guys in that unit from Arizona has ever heard this story, but that day kind of like tore me up inside. And just from there, I just started just doing whatever, living the rest of that deployment for me, just going out with the boys, drinking every port we stopped in, getting blacked out. Started smoking cigars, cigarettes, just because I was on deployment and it was what the guys were doing. Didn't really last long. My chaplain kind of pulled me aside and she just like talked to me. She opened her door to whenever we need to come talk. So she talked to me about her faith and asked me about mine, and it kind of like challenged me to like take a step back, and I kind of saw what I was doing. And I started hanging out less with those guys doing that stuff. And post deployment, the same chaplain, Holly Short, she came to me and she was like, hey, I have this rock climbing opportunity that I got an email about. And that's the first time that I met Rick Wolf with the SSO guys. So she got me connected. I went and then met Rick. He had this great story, did my rock climbing thing. And I was like, all right, this is cool. Go back to work, you know, back in the sucky, dull office job. And at that point, I got a car, started going to a church. But the churches that I was going to were full of just like older people. And like, it wasn't a very welcoming environment. Like I'd go sit by myself and then go through the church service and go back to base at the end of the day and just do whatever. Wasn't really feeling challenged by the church I was going to. Wasn't really feeling like a family or like the presence of the Lord. So I was still living my life by myself. Going back to hang out with those same friends because I felt welcomed by them. Just that Marine Corps mentality, that bond between brothers. I found it there rather than in the church, which was sad. But, you know, those guys are great, but not always the best influence for you, you know? So you got to make sure you find those good influences, those good brothers and sisters in Christ.
Okay, so your story brings up several questions that I get asked regularly. One is this. Sometimes parents will reach out to us as an organization because we work with folks kind of on the other side of trauma in the military, and a lot of folks dealing with combat issues and just a lot of stuff. So parents will reach out to us and say, I've got a son or a daughter who's getting ready to go into the military. I've raised them in church. I've raised them in a good home, but I want to prepare them for the things that they're going to face and the things they're going to deal with. Considering your own story, maybe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe you just weren't as prepared to make the right decision when those moments came, the moments of temptation, or not even temptation, just everyone else going, one direction, and so you're going to go along with them. What are some things that parents and youth leaders and mentors could do, in your opinion, to prepare young people who are going into the military so that they're more equipped to make better decisions when those times come? What are just a couple of things that maybe you wish you had been taught, or looking back you were taught but you didn't really get a hold of? Some things that could help them as they come into the military.
I would say staying connected is a huge one. staying connected to like those old friends and just those people that you know are good, strong Christians, because that was definitely a huge one for me. I didn't really have that here, and I didn't really reach back home to get it from my old friends. So I kind of try to do it on my own, kind of try to seek it out by myself, but obviously that wasn't the easier way and that wasn't the right way. But that'd definitely be my advice, to stay connected with those old friends, or better yet, stay connected with those old leaders that you know have always been there to help you through those struggles and through those times.
I think that the military is good for anyone who has the right attitude going in. I was raised in a Christian home. I was, I kind of, lived that life. Some would call it a sheltered life. I don't think it was sheltered, but certainly protected or insulated from a lot of the negative influences. Then I found myself in the Marine Corps, and we did, deployment and all of those things. Some parents are very scared, and I think that because they're scared, they're just, I'm going to pray and I'm going to hope, and God's in control. Is it valuable to speak to young people about the temptations they will face before they find themselves in those situations, so they can at least think through that and process that, not to scare them, but to prepare them? Is there value in preparing for those specific areas that they're going to have to deal with before they get into the military? So they need to be connected, but they also probably need to be aware. Is that something you think would be helpful?
For sure. Definitely. I would definitely agree with that. I mean, myself, I didn't really have family members that were prior service that I could talk to or get knowledge from. And a lot of the people that I did know that were in the Marine Corps just talked about the negative leadership, and that was about it. They didn't really talk about the other experiences that you'd go through, or like the challenges that would come with it as a Christian. So that definitely would have probably helped me, or stray away from those situations, or at least try and get plugged in better with better people.
What do you say to people who are against Christian young people going into the military? And I say that I had this conversation when I was probably 17 or 18 years old, getting ready to go in the Marine Corps. And I had a lot of people in my life saying Christian people should not be in the military. There's no place for Christian people in the military. And I had a Christian friend who had been in the military a long time, and he talked to me about that and talked me through that. What do you say to people who are against the idea of Christian young people going into the military?
I just asked them why not, and then I'm like, our roles as Christian is to bring more people to Christ and to show the love and faith of Jesus Christ. And the people that need it the most, I would say, are those people in the military, people that have had that combat experience or that trauma. Like, a lot of these guys are alone, they sit in their rooms by themselves at the end of the workday and just completely isolate themselves. And it's just sad to see. Like, a lot of my guys will like shoot texts and be like, hey guys, feeling lonely or whatever. And we'll all just lift them up, or we'll go to their room, sit with them, talk with them, fellowship with them, and just letting them know that, like, that's one of the reasons I joined, was to reach out to people that are lost or broken while in the military.
I have always believed that, I can only speak from my experience in the Marine Corps, but I'm sure it's the same in all the services, but I've always believed that in a lot of ways it's easier to be a Christian in that environment because the line is so clear. So there's a line, and people over here are not living like they care at all about God and what God wants for their lives. And then you can decide to be on the other side of that. So if you go with the right mindset, you really can be a light and a testimony. And I mean, there are endless opportunities to be an encouragement to people who really need Christians to be encouraging to them. I don't know very many places in the world where there is a more open door to really living out the Christian life than in the military. But it requires the right mindset going into it, right? I mean, you have to be prepared for that.
For sure.
Talk about the church a little bit. So one of the major factors in my life as a Marine and as a young adult trying to figure things out for myself. One of the things that kind of kept me on track and got me on track and caused me to think right thoughts was the local church that my wife and I were a part of when we moved out here to Southern California, and I started working at Camp Pendleton. There was a church and there was a church family, and they really helped me along. And at that time, I would say my faith was moderate. I was a Christian. I was thankful for that. I wanted to do right, but I wasn't overly concerned with it. And it was that church family that really helped me and helped me in my marriage. What are some things that the church can do, local churches can do, to support service members? We get asked this question a lot too. I think churches are sometimes scared because they don't know how to support the service member. For you, a young guy who has to stream services because they can't get a ride, or someone who comes back from deployment and you didn't find the church super welcoming or helpful or encouraging initially. What are some things on your list? If I were to start a church that helped or served the military, this is what I would want it to do. What are some of those things?
Small groups is definitely a huge one. Just young adult groups. That was one of the biggest things that I searched for when I was looking for a church. Just people around my age that I could actually interact and relate to. Like the church I go to now is the one that I've stuck with for the past year and a half, just because they've had a really good young adults group. And like those guys like lift me up and like they challenge me, and they just check up on me every once in a while. And also just the church has, they actually have a military outreach program at the church where this lady, Linda, and her husband will come on base. They'll have food with people, or for Christmas, they gave me a couple of gift cards to hand out to service members at my unit. And I was able to do that. And like they'd write a sweet note on the gift card. And like those guys just felt loved just from those gift cards coming from like a church family.
Yeah, it's really just the church, just being the church, I guess, just reaching out to those who need it. So Soul Survivor Outdoor, we work with Soul Survivor. Folks who watch this show or listen to it regularly know about that ministry and about Rick. Can you talk about the importance of non-church, non-chaplain Christian ministries serving service members and military members? You've gotten involved with SSO and you now as a Marine getting ready to go into a different role in the Marine Corps, continue to serve. How important are organizations like Soul Survivor, and I would say like Mighty Oaks, like our organization, and many others? How important are those to those service members?
So I actually got the opportunity to put together one of the SSO events for my unit. We went on a skydiving event, and after that, a lot of those guys came up to me and they just thanked me and like just showed their appreciation, because a lot of the times they won't sign up for these events that are like faith-based because they're like, oh, I don't want to sit in a church, or I don't want to sit in a kumbaya circle just talking about my feelings. So like this SSO, like Rick brings these guys out skydiving, rock climbing, and then brings them food, lunch, and then we sit down, we just talk about God. Usually somebody shares their story, their faith story, and then we have quiet time, and he'll ask if anyone wants to say the prayer with him. They'll say the prayer. So I would say like these events are huge for people that don't feel comfortable in like a kumbaya circle or like going to churches and stuff like that. So this is definitely one of those events that would get the ball rolling for them at least.
Yeah, to have kind of a third place that you can go. It's not on base, it's not at a church, it's it's rock climbing, it's skydiving, it's somewhere else. Creates a great environment for those conversations. One of the things that I know working with people in the military and veterans who have served in the military is that when you do, and you kind of put yourself out there and then you tell your own story, as you started to do, people will then tell you their story. And sometimes what happens is people who are desperate, some searching for hope, they feel hopeless, maybe they're many unfortunately are on the precipice of making very bad decisions, they'll begin to come and share those things with you and ask you for direction and ask you for hope. It's funny because in the New Testament we're told that we should always be prepared to speak of the hope that is within us. How do you counsel folks who come to you, young people who come to you, and you're a young guy yourself, and you're sorting through some of this yourself, but what do you say to offer hope? Where do you point people toward who are hopeless, who are searching, who are lost, and maybe for one reason or another, they're somewhat desperate in their lives? What do you say to those people?
I just let them know how I give everything to God, and then just my friends at church, how I use them as kind of like who I lean on whenever I stumble or whenever I feel weak. And they always bring me up. So a lot of those guys will come up, tell me their stories, and then I ask them, like, do they go to a church? Or like, do they have friends in their lives that are positive influences that aren't just always asking them, hey, let's go to the club, hey, let's go do this or that? Like, do you have those positive influences in your life? Are you setting yourself up for success? And a lot of them will realize, like, no, like all of my friends, all they want to ever do is drink and party. And so they try and back up a little bit and realize, like, dang, maybe these friends that I have right now aren't the best influence in my life.
That's great advice. It's amazing that we really become, in a lot of ways, the people that we are around. A friend of mine said a long time ago, it's a great quote, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. You show me your friends and I'll show you your future, because that's where you're going to end up. And that's a great statement. Gene, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate your time and your continued service. And man, keep going after it. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We'll talk again soon. For those of you that are watching, thank you so much. Definitely appreciate your time. And again, I hope that these conversations are encouraging to you. When you hear a story like Gene's, it's amazing. There are people around the world who are doing such important work, and so many of those folks we'll never know about. And it's great to know that there are people having important conversations, making good decisions, and moving forward in a meaningful way. And I hope that was an encouragement to you today. Again, if you are not watching on YouTube, jump over to YouTube. You can check out our channel, a lot of content there, and you can subscribe, you can hit like, share out the content, comment, hit the notification bell. That lets you know when more stuff comes online, and you will stay in tune and in touch with us. Thank you, and I hope you have a great week. We decided to end today's show with an update on the work of the Mighty Oaks Foundation and some of the ways that we're doing our best to overcome the regulations that have been imposed on us. The whole world is upside down right now, and things are very, very different. And when you operate an organization whose motto is never fight alone, imposed isolation is a problem. That's been a real problem. Yeah. We have talked about this a lot, but one of the things that we know to be true, even as confusing as things are, is that imposing isolation, particularly on those who are already struggling with feelings of isolation and in many cases, physical isolation from folks, this is a very, very difficult time for a lot of folks, and particularly for those who may be dealing with trauma issues and just a slew of issues that we face and that we deal with. And even this last week, we were trying to put out some information, some communication on how to avoid isolation in the midst of all of this. But we have done our best to creatively deal with these issues, the fact that we cannot have in-person programs and we can't get people together and we can't do the things that we normally do to deal with these trauma issues and to help folks move forward. What are some of the things in the last couple of weeks, some of the decision points that we've had to come to, and some of the decisions we've made to help not only those who have applied and are waiting for a program, which in a lot of cases is a very tenuous time. Folks who, they're at the end of the rope, they're applying to a program like ours, and then we say we'll get back to you in a couple of months. Yeah. So how are we serving those folks, and what are we doing to stay in contact with the thousands of people who've come through our program? What are some of the things we've tried to do?
Yeah, well, it started from a simple conversation of us understanding what we can't do, but then looking at, okay, well, what can we actually do? And then with that, we had to look at, well, is it even worth, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Of juice worth the squeeze.
As far as what we could, try to put our time and effort in, and in trying to walk through what that is. And
part of it was not knowing how long any of this would last.
Yeah, exactly.
You and I, our very first conversation about this was, we're not changing anything. We're having programs. I don't care what anyone else is doing.
Yeah, I mean,
like 3 days later, the whole world shut down.
Almost all the way up to a week prior to the session starting. Then we got notified, hey, this location, we're going to be able to have them, which then made us like, oh, okay, well, what do we do now? We got to look at the other locations.
We'll roll somewhere else.
And even now, we're still in a very unknown situation of nobody really knows what's going to go on for how long and what and new guidelines and restrictions are almost coming out daily. So it's really difficult to even try to even look forward or even try to plan, and especially with as much logistics and coordination and all that stuff that comes into play with a program. It's not just as easy as, oh, we'll not do it here, we'll do it over here, and all that. And we're still getting applications, and we're still getting people reaching out to us. We had 3 to 4 classes full of applicants. So for us to be able to say, hey, we can't do anything, we'll hopefully get you later, just was unacceptable. Even though that's the situation. And I would say that most people understood what was going on. They understood there's really not much that could be done, but we still had to look at, okay, what can we do?
Can you, before you talk about what we decided to do or some of the things we are doing, let's talk about the applicants for a second, right? The type of people that apply to our program, and it's all over. I mean, there's a lot of folks who are doing really well that come to our program, people who are in crisis. But talk about the type of people that are applying to come to our program, and then, for me at least, as the organization's director, it's understanding that a lot of folks who are applying are doing so under duress because a family member is kind of making them. There's an ultimatum that's been pushed on them. Whatever, they don't want to. It's not summer camp. They don't want to come. And so us saying we have to push you out means they may never engage with us again. Can you talk about the applicants for just a second? Yeah,
well, first off, like you said, most people are not applying to come to us because they want to go essentially to a leadership course. It's not a retreat in the sense of go have a good time or anything like that. So for somebody to finally put the effort in to press submit for an application to get to us, that person has had to come to some kind of realization that something's off. They're not fully right, or they're tired of a spouse, a friend, a family member constantly poking at them saying, hey, you need help. So for them to get to that point, they're already kind of at the line or are very close getting to the edge of that. And so for somebody to get to that point, then like you mentioned, hey, we can't do anything with you until whenever. I mean, that's just, most of these people are already feeling at the end of the rope, and that they are fighting alone, that there is nobody out there, that people don't understand them. So that was one of the main things that we had to look at is how do we assist those people, even though we understand what we can't do, because we understand the type of people that we're dealing with. I don't want to say unstable, but we just don't know. We only get an application that has so much information in it, and I've always said I never want to just think everything's going to work out and that guy will be fine or anything like that. I don't want it to ever be where that point in time where I thought, yeah, it'll be good, is when something just terrible happens.
We have regularly, I don't know if it's every program, but regularly students who say something like this: I decided I would come to the program, and if something didn't change over the time I was there, that I would take my life when I got home. I mean, that's a real conversation we have all the time.
I would definitely say every session. Yesterday, Chad Robichaud, the president founder, he shared a text message about a lady who messaged him or commented on one of his posts on social media, and how just thanking for the ability that we took her husband in when it almost seemed like everybody else was turning them down, or they had some very, very lengthy wait list or something, but we were able to take them in right away. In which normally that's the case. If somebody comes to us and they're in that dire need, we're going to do everything that we can. I've said it time and time again. I will sleep on the floor to give up that bed, and I know anybody else a part of the leadership team would do the same, and we've done it before. I mean, we've put cots in a room, and we all slept in that same room.
There were like 6 of us sleeping in that same room.
Yeah, and so I mean, we do what we need to do, but now this is not anything I ever expected to happen. Even now, it's still kind of like odd. It's the be careful what you wish for thing, where people are like, man, I wish this weekend could last forever, because
we're on a long weekend.
It's pretty crazy. Where all these things that we always hope to be able to get time to do, and we have that time, and now it's like, whoa, what do I do with that? So for me personally, understanding what time I do have on my hands and what I can and can't do, I can only imagine what it's like for those people that are in a position where there isn't hope, or the hope is very dim, and they're struggling day in and day out. You add on loss of job, or not being able to pay the bills, and the financial instability. You just compound that on top of who do you talk to, who do you go to. You can't go and hang out with somebody anymore. A phone call maybe only can go so far. Same thing with a Zoom meeting. So the
worst thing you can do is isolate, and it's been imposed on everyone.
Now it's you get fined if you are well, at least here in California, you can receive fines and very punitive damages if you do go out.
It's created a very strange environment.
Definitely a very odd catch-22 situation. But again, we had to take a look at what we know what we can't, but what can we do? So the team and I, we got together and kind of walked through different options and plans, and we just looked at, okay, well, here's an option, and with the option that I'm going to talk about in a minute, we even had to go into that as optimistic as possible, just because we've been doing legacy programs with guys and gals at the session for so long. We have that expectation. We know what that's like, and to try to replicate that or duplicate it in a different form, just it's not the same thing. So my expectations and my understandings were kind of almost turning any hope down, or that's not going to work, and it was kind of that driving force of like, it's going to be impossible. So I had to go into it, and something told me, change your expectations, because having an expectation of what we can do as far as having the virtual program isn't going to be anywhere near being face to face in the room with the same guy, and that's where we really we got traction once we started reframing our thought and the brainstorming, if you will, after that.
A lot of people have asked over the last couple of weeks, because it's not uncommon right now for organizations, even organizations like ours, to do virtual stuff or distance whatever. Why aren't you guys doing that? And it's very hard to explain to someone who hasn't been to one of our programs, but the in-person, person-to-person conversations, and then just spending 24 hours a day for a week together, there is so much power in that, and that cannot be duplicated by just watching a video or spending those times together. So one of the challenges we've been dealing with is, as you mentioned, how do we reframe our expectations? But at the same time, how do we do our best to still create as much as possible that environment? And so, what we understand is the classes that we teach are really important, but they're not everything.
No.
And in fact, we've had this conversation a lot, that the classes we teach are less important than so much of the other stuff that goes on. And I think that's one thing people don't, unless they've been there, don't grasp about what we do. We spend 5 days teaching classes, having breakouts, but those classes just kind of provide the content for team leaders and others to use to help individuals. And so it is a challenge. And so we had to look at that and say, well, we're not going to have the same result, but this is going to last a lot longer than any of us thought.
Yeah.
We started by making phone calls and reaching out to people and texting and connecting, and our aftercare team is super busy. And I feel like our team is probably busier now than on a normal cycle because we're trying to figure things out. But in addition to all of those things, this is going to last a while. So we have to do something remote. So started to create that.
Yeah. And it goes back to, it's easier said than done.
Sure.
Everybody has a, well, why don't you do this, or what about that? And granted, ideas are great, but you really have to be able to sort through them and see what's truly beneficial, what's reality, and what can we do, and trying to take a full days of classes with breakouts where the teams are getting together and breaking down really, okay, what's that class all about, and really digging down deep. That's where a lot of the, I don't want to say magic happens, but a lot of the work and things that come out on the other side happen is during that breakout session where the people can go through that class and really figure out, okay, what was being said here, and that team leader's job is to pull that information out of somebody so they can understand that, man, it's okay to talk about this. I need to talk about it. Here's the importance. And then when one guy's able to say something, it can almost encourage somebody else, or it brings out the best in everybody in that group, and sometimes the worst, but it essentially turns into the best. Trying to take that and put it into a Zoom kind of meeting. I mean, just doing Zoom, our operations meetings during this, and even before that, we had been operating, all over the place through this kind of virtual setting, and it's still awkward. There's a lag that you're going to come up and you're going to come across, and somebody will drop off because of lack of signal and all that. So those were the roadblocks, if you will, or the speed bumps that we knew we were going to encounter as we were setting this up. And then the schedule. How do you take 14 classes, where sometimes there's 3 to 4 classes a day, and teach that throughout the day? Right. So you're not sitting in a classroom environment, you're not in that actual physical breakout session. Somebody's sitting behind a computer, TV, whatever it is. And as I thought about it, I kind of put myself in those shoes of, I'm watching our church service in my living room, through the model everybody else is doing, and it's extremely difficult for me to not fiddle and not want to get on my phone and do all these other things. And I was like, man, these classes aren't the funnest thing to go through. They're not the most content entertaining or anything like that. So to have somebody to maintain their focus and concentration during a class, that was going to be very difficult, which forced us to even go and kind of revamp our classes, how we teach our classes. So we had to shrink those down and kind of compact them to where that testimonial portion of that class can, I don't want to say pick up the slack, but essentially fill in those blanks and help keep somebody entertained, help keep somebody connected, and that content relatable.
So we decided in all of that, because that's a lot to communicate to a person on the other side, we can't do either just all kind of Zoom-based conversation stuff because of people dropping out and so forth. But if we do all video content, then it's really easy to get up and walk away. Yeah. So what we decided to do is a hybrid of both. Yep. So spent a week, a couple days, recording every lesson. So the video portion is there, and then there will be breakouts, still small group times and discussion that are really Zoom-based meetings. Yeah. So I went through our normal schedule, our normal classes, and I went through several different scheduling, option layouts. And what we kind of came down and decided on was
figuring out, do we do a morning session, like an AM session, have a break, and then come back and do a PM, which is essentially afternoon, or do we do all mornings or a 4-hour block stretched over time throughout the week? So those were the two main options that we were looking at. And Luis Rivera, operations manager, we both got together and said, hey, what do you think is the best one? And we decided to go with that morning and afternoon block, which we can capture all the lessons, all the breakouts in a 3-day span, so Monday through Wednesday. And the reason why we went with that one is so you've got 3 days to try to capture everybody. You have a break in there, and then we have the videos that if somebody, for whatever reason, they can't make that video, they can easily go back and watch it, and then come back and talk about it. Versus the stretched out almost Monday through Saturday lesson where I can only imagine by Tuesday guys are like,
I'm done.
We start with 10 guys showing up in the group, and then 9, 8, 7. And by the end of the week, you got hopefully everybody, but probably quite a few have dropped out. So being able to jump in and do this almost 3-day virtual program where the team leaders will still be able to teach a lesson. Mm-hmm. They'll be able to go and break out into their individual breakout groups, virtually, and then come back and regroup and do another lesson, have a break, and then regroup in the afternoon. And they still have their materials so they can follow along. And the ability for those team leaders to have sidebar breakouts is there, so that they want to meet off hours, because I'm going to set the block of time. Here's your training block for the AM block, and here's your PM one. So everybody understands the commitment that's needed, and any issues can be addressed. Because I with that, I'm like adding in, well, man, if most families right now are doing schooling by home, people are working by home,
everybody's at home.
Now we're going to do this program by home. I've got a couple of computers in our house, but you can only do so much, and then understanding not everybody has that set up. So there was a lot that we had to take into consideration. We had to understand that this isn't going to be the best thing for everybody, and it's not going to be the perfect thing, but we had to do something.
We can't wait with the folks that need help, and we have the opportunity to do it. So and we got to retool to make that happen.
And the biggest thing we had to make a point of is that this isn't a substitute for the normal program. This is just a way for us to stay connected with people, make sure that we're still sharing the hope and what's worked for me and worked for everybody else that has come through the program, and we want to still get that content out and make it available to anybody who's interested. And these lessons will be available, so if somebody's having an issue or needs a refresher, we'll be able to share the class with them. And then hopefully when all this thing kind of is over with and the dust settles, we'll go back to the normal programs. But we have this this ability now to continue to reach people and keep moving forward in a different way.
We may find that this is a good resource for folks. So just as we have a certain set of goals for the programs that we do typically. The goals are a little bit different, but the goal for this, and again, for those that are listening that might be wondering if there's something available for them or for someone that they know, this is not to serve as a replacement to an in-person program, but to serve as in the meantime, it is a way to stay engaged. To there may be physical isolation, but there can be a virtual connection with real people who can ask real questions and have real conversations, and really hopefully get to the point where those folks can come into an in-person program.
That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, as we conclude, all of this is made possible because of folks who support the work of Mighty Oaks. And it's very, very important for us to explain and for our supporters to understand that the work of Mighty Oaks does not stop simply because of the things that are going on in the world. When you're job, when your focus, when your passion is about helping people who are struggling and hurting, it doesn't matter what else is happening in the world, we'll continue to do that. And we're able to do that.
Like our screen.
When our screen goes out, sometimes that happens.
We'll continue to go.
But we continue. And we're able to do that because of the generous support of men and women across the country who understand just how important this work is. So thank you, and look forward to talking to you next time. Maybe next time we'll be able to do this outside or something. Who knows?
Well,
maybe they'll start to relax.
We're already going to get in trouble for our distance.
Yeah, we are sitting close.
I checked my temperature though. I'm good.
Yeah, don't tell anybody. We're not 6 feet apart. Just don't tell anybody.
It's like the mirror. Objects are
we'll be all right.
closer than they appear.
Man. Good talking to you guys, and hope to talk again soon. And hope you have a great weekend.